Hey, what's up guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun Resurrection channel. Appreciate it if you guys would take a moment to subscribe and hit that bell notification so that anytime I publish a video, you guys get notified. And as you guys are probably aware by now, I'm doing most of my work with Canary Cry News Talk right now, so go to canarycry.party and you'll see all the ways you can check out the show, consume it in chunks, subscribe to the RSS feed, and I also have the Face Like the Sun video archive link there as well. So everything that I've been working on, it's all there, canarycry.party. Very easy to remember, fun to type into your browser. Please check it out. Okay, so I want to briefly touch on this article from Bloomberg. We did talk about it on Canary Cry News Talk episode 486, but I wanted to give my little breakdown here. So Bloomberg, in the headline, "Forget Burning Man, psychedelic shamans now headed to Davos." Now, of course, we're just a few days away as of this recording from the Davos meeting, the first one in person since the beginning of the quote-unquote pandemic. And let's see what this says here, because I find it very fascinating. Psychedelics industry targets power players. The World Economic Forum, a gathering of the global elite now synonymous with the quaint Swiss town of Davos, where it's held, isn't the usual place you'd expect to find a shaman. Do breath work or get rooted in your body. But this year's gathering of government leaders and corporate executives will have access to a medical psychedelic House of Davos program with almost 40 sessions and speakers, including researchers, entrepreneurs, investors, and some who consider themselves shamans. And of course, we've been tracking this for years, but here we are, the merchants of the earth, the World Economic Forum, finally openly intermingling with the spiritual guides, the shamans, who will help them with use of psychedelic substances to have spiritual experiences and thus help them become, I don't know, better citizens of the world, or of Mystery Babylon, become better merchants. And it is quite remarkable, folks, that this story has such relevance to what is mentioned in Revelation 18. And this is one of those things that should be more mainstream with Christians out there. Not enough people talk about it, in my opinion. Revelation 18 talks about the fall of Babylon, and my whole thesis about what Mystery Babylon is comes from a friend, a brother in Christ, a researcher named Chris White. He did a great study about how the Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation is eschatological Jerusalem. And there are many reasons that are biblically airtight that suggest this to be a fact. Now, given that presupposition, there's also some eschatology that speaks to how the Antichrist is likely to present himself as the long-awaited Jewish Messiah, who will try to fulfill certain messianic prophecies that have not yet been fulfilled, where Christians say that the second coming of Jesus as part of the restoration of all creation will be that point. And but the scriptures also talks about this fake out that happens beforehand, and it perfectly fits this Antichrist figure, and it appears to line up to what the rabbinical and religious Jewish authorities suggest to be a coming Messiah for the Jewish faith that will attempt to restore the land and everything else. That entity itself appears to be the Antichrist as described in the Bible. But given that context, the official introduction of psychedelics in the world of business, in the world of economics, finance, the actual infrastructure of our economies, would suggest that it will spread throughout and become normalized, as it has been doing for the last decade or so. But let's hop back to this article real quick. It says here, quote, "It's a really big shift for world leaders to inquire about how they might be able to use psychedelics," end quote, said Marique Hazan, Chief Officer of Energia Holdings, Inc. And this is the other component of this, the financial component. The same way we saw the cannabis boom in the last few years, we're going to see a boom in probably these types of substances: MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT. Businesses that will try to create products surrounding these substances will have speculative pumps. Likely in the next wave of recovery, since we are currently in a recession, even though everyone's talking about how recession is coming. Don't listen to the mainstream, folks. Now, the other thing they're going to be doing at Davos here is having ethical debates. Oh, that isn't that lovely. Thank you for having ethical debates, such as how to guard against abusive practices in an industry where people are incredibly vulnerable while under the influence. Quote, what about a Coke bottle in a clinic? Hazan asked. He said the idea of putting products in front of people undergoing an experience needs to be discussed. Now, this is where subliminal messaging, mind control, MK Ultra, all those topics come into play. Is it ethical to influence the subconscious against somebody's will? In other words, enslave their souls, as in their minds, to desire something subconsciously because of advertisements and subliminal messaging? Incredibly unethical. But part of the conversation for these merchants who use advertising as part of the economic engine. Later in the article, 2 shamans who plan to attend also don't shy away from business topics, saying they're deeply entwined in what they do. And let me just jump back to Revelation 18 real quick and actually highlight the passages that are important here. So in the section about the lament over Babylon, starting around verse 11, it says here, and the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, the destruction of Babylon, or Mystery Babylon, because there is no one left to buy their cargo. Now this is important. Who's buying the cargo? Who made these merchants rich? Okay, what is the cargo? Let's start there. Cargo of gold, silver, precious stones, and pearls of fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet, of all kinds of citron wood, and every article of ivory, precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, of cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, and frankincense, of wine, olive oil, fine flour, and wheat, of cattle, sheep, horses, and chariots, of slaves, and souls of men. We can take a deep dive into each one of these items and show how it ties back to Old Testament temple worship. For example, in Exodus 26, verse 31, they make a veil for the ark, and it is described as a veil of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine linen. Then we have something interesting here, because in Ezekiel 28, of course, this is the famous passage about the adversary, Satan, Lucifer, through the king of Tyre, and as part of the description here, it talks about how you were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. So there's something about the history of the adversary and the arrival of this temple and the beast and the false prophet and all of it that makes these merchants incredibly wealthy by trading in these objects. Included in these objects is of slaves and souls of men. They are actually trading and getting rich off of the souls of men. Let me hop back to the article. Florencia Bolini specializes in 5-MeO-DMT, known as the God molecule, for the short but intense experiences it invokes. The God molecule, the temple worship, Mystery Babylon, the harlot, the feminine. And if we look at Esther 1:6 here, where it talks about Xerxes' royal feast, it says, there were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rods and marble pillars, and also couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. Incredible wealth, opulence. And I bring up the feminine aspect of this because, again, it's consistent here. Later back in the article here, she expects the Davos experience to be different from her annual pilgrimage to Burning Man, the famous Nevada festival, where she showcases her feminine approach to psychedelic medicine. There it is, a feminine approach to psychedelic medicine, merchants of the earth, trading in the souls of men, and using what? Psychedelics? Sorcery? Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. That's in Mystery Babylon. And the voices of the bride and the bridegroom will never call out in you again. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth. Maybe the great ones of the earth like the World Economic Forum people? Because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And I know a lot more people are aware of this now, especially after the whole pandemic thing, but sorcery is Pharmakeia. Not just big pharma, but actual psychedelics And psychedelics is becoming part of Big Pharma. This is the next wave of Big Pharma, is psychedelics. So apart from wanting to see Klaus Schwab high on mushrooms, I think this story is very indicative that we live in some incredible times that the Bible prophesied about, and we need to look up and eagerly wait for the return of our King. Have an awesome day, guys. God bless.